What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Primarch Purpose. This is where I give my thoughts on what I think the Emperor's endgame goal was for his Primarch project. He differentiated each individual Primarch for a reason, and what is that reason? We never really get to see it in 40k normally because the heresy happens and all that jazz. So, as I go into more detail in my intro overview ramble, there are some what-if style scenario setups we have here. The Imperium is founded on the Imperial truth, and the Great Crusade has come to a successful conclusion. The Emperor alive and well, and the Primarchs are alive and well and loyal to the Emperor alongside their legions. What that means is the Imperial truth is the law of the land. There is no ecclesiarchy amongst the Imperium, and the Inquisition is different than what we know it to be standardly in 40k. And the threats are still there. There's still Xenos threats, there's still Chaos threats, and still human insurrectionist threats. So that's all still there. So there's still plenty of strife and stuff to deal with in this Imperial Truth-driven Imperium. With that said, we are looking at the 18th Legion's Primarch. We're looking at Vulkan here. Now, Vulkan is named after Vulcan, the Roman god of fire and forging. Very on the nose for Vulkan himself. Now, I didn't really go over physical features much in the other Primarch purposes. I should have with Corax, because Corax has got really pale white skin with black eyes and black hair, jet black hair, and he has no whites of his eyes. I believe even the whites of his eyes are black, so full on black eyes. With Vulkan and his legion, his sons, they're all charcoal black skin with blood red demonic red eyes completely. No white, completely red demonic eyes. They look the exact opposite of the Defenders of Humanity. But as we know them in 40k, the Salamanders are basically kind of like the People's Champion Space Marine Force, the nicest to humanity that we got, in essence, just about. And this comes directly from their Primarch. Now, one thing about the Primarch is that he's a perpetual. He didn't know this until the Job Site Massacre, so the purposes of this scenario setup, since the Job Site Massacre never happens, you'll have him discovered in a particularly dire situation during the Great Crusade, whatever. My point is, it's not super important for, I feel, at the end of the day what his purpose is, but he is a perpetual, and maybe that was by design for this Primarch by the Emperor. And he's unique in that he's the only perpetual, and so the Emperor is also perpetual, so he has that in common with his father. Basically meaning he can resurrect from death over and over again. In fact, Vulkan has even come back from disintegration. Kind of crazy. But stuff like that kind of drives him temporarily insane, so it's not the best tactic, but he has this. Now, if this is a purpose built creation by the Emperor for Vulkan, I think it's because of Vulkan's purpose. Now, being a perpetual would really embolden and strengthen any Primarch's purpose, but I feel because Vulkan was designed with empathy towards humanity in mind, that strong sense of empathy, like I said, I think was created by the Emperor deliberately in Vulkan's genetics. I think if there was any Primarch to be a perpetual, the Emperor would want Vulkan to be that. I say this because a lot of Primarchs view humanity as kind of this annoying thing that can get in their way while they're trying to defend that very annoying thing, right? You know what I mean? Like, they understand that they're creating the Imperium for humanity, but at the same time, it's like, get out of the way, kid, you bother me, you're in the way. The adults are working here, go away. It's kind of how a lot of Primarchs view that. We're founding this empire for you guys, but just don't bother us. And that's okay. They are truly detached from humanity, so it makes sense. They're not even from humanity, they're from the Emperor's genetic makeup, so sure. But it would make sense that the Emperor would want a Primarch that truly feels for the people. And I think Vulkan is that Primarch. I think that's his ultimate purpose, to be the people's champion, if you will, the defenders of humanity extraordinaire is what I think Vulkan is. He doesn't just understand that, yes, the Imperium was founded for humans, but he feels it in his bones, right? He feels it in his core. He understands that we must defend these frail little human bodies. And it's that sense, that understanding, that empathy that I think helps found the Promethean cult, well, Promethean creed, really, of self-sufficiency, self-sacrifice, honorableness, and brotherhoodness. I think it all stems from his empathy towards humanity. And that's why we see the Salamanders chapter in 40k standardly during the second and third wars of Armageddon, doing a lot of rearguard action that isn't something that legends are written about, but still vital and crucial. Because they understand that, well, yes, we have to stop the enemy. We have plenty of chapters on planet doing that already. We are also really good at defending humanity. They must be defended proper. Not just fight a war for them, but actually get stuck in, defend and escort their convoys and the evacuation of refugees and all that. Have a hand in that. And as a result, they act very different from how their physical appearance may suggest at first meeting. I'm sure they keep their helmets on around people in distress because it would just make it worse. But yeah, they are those defenders of humanity. And it all stems from Vulkan. Now, Vulkan is also an immensely talented and capable artificer. He and Ferrus Manus are both that. Where Ferrus Manus' equipment isn't necessarily full of form, it's pretty much focused on function. Vulkan is also focused on function, but he has his form meet said function, which is why Vulkan stuff just looks very artifacty, nice, like, if you will. So, with that said, this is brought up because it's one thing he does. It's why his equipment is so good. And it's something that his legion takes up on, being self-reliant and self-sufficient. They maintain their equipment. It isn't left to the tech marines to maintain everything. The standard rank and file and the leadership take care of stuff as well as forging their own equipment. Elaborate power swords and hammers and even bolters are created by the hands of standard salamanders, not just the tech marines. So, really cool. It means they're very well equipped. And that's very helpful when you have to be self-reliant and self-sufficient. So it's part of that whole core teaching as well. This leads to a very capable and technologically capable force. And I think the ultimate purpose that the Emperor had for Vulkan is to lead the charge in being rearguard style, right? Kind of like police, in a way. Police and National Guard, right? Like, if countries have a military and they have internal security. Different levels of it, of course, but, in general, I guess unless it's a military state, but we're not getting into politics here, but in general, your military force is not what you have defending your own streets, in general, until certain really bad things happen. But this is the Imperium, this is 40k, so you would definitely have that. And I think you would have Vulkan leading that charge, right? Looking at what is going on, seeing the reports and going, okay, there's 3 regiments of the Imperial Guard, the Astral Militarum. I'm in this sector of space to oversee redistribution of the planetary populace because the planet is, breaking apart or something's happening, or the star is imploding and they need to get humans out of there. So Vulkan can look at that report and decide we need to be there because we can speed this up or do whatever, or if it's under control, you could say. And I think you would see that level of mentality or that concept of infrastructure, defense, and rearguard maintenance campaigning, if you will, for the Salamanders because of Vulkan. Truly the people's champion embodied. And it wouldn't just be that. They would go forth and reconquer planets or purge Xenos planets or whatever it is, attack a craft world or whatever might be necessary to do. Deal with a Necron Tomb world, whatever the case is throughout the eons, or throughout the millennia, I should say. Eons is a bit much. But, storm a Tyranid bioship. Yeah, all that would happen. All that is defending humanity. But the difference is also in those campaigns, where other Space Marine forces, and therefore the Primarchs, would destroy the enemy and then leave. We see this more so in 40k with Space Marine chapters, because during the Great Crusade, you had each expeditionary fleet had the full shebang. It had the legions, it had Imperial Army at the time, it had mechanical stuff, it had planet building stuff. So the Legion would be at the vanguard, conquer the world, or the campaign would be concluded and the legions would leave because they had the infrastructure in place with them to do things. In 40k, the chapters don't have that, so a lot of chapters would go fight a campaign, destroy the enemy, and then leave the planet, which is in a state of ruin because of all the campaigning. They would just leave and the planet would be left pretty defenseless. With the Salamanders, because of Vulkan's teachings and everything, not so. They would defend a world, I feel, in this scenario. We would see Vulkan leading his Salamanders planet side, pushing back the enemy, purging them from the planet, and then digging the ditches, tilling the field, putting up the walls again, fixing the world's personal infrastructure, if you will, to the point where it's defendable by the local planetary defense force in some state of competency before leaving. They would ensure that as part of their own self-reliant nature and part of their empathy towards humans. We just theoretically semi-destroy the world in defending it. Now we gotta put it to a state of being defensible before we leave, so they can be self-reliant themselves and go on that way. I think that is what we would see with the Salamanders. I think if they were in a joint campaign, if Vulkan was in a joint campaign with another Primarch on a world, maybe pushing back an Orkwa, once they were successful in pushing back and defeating the entire Orkwa, I think you would see the other Primarch and their forces probably leaving, and Vulkan and his forces staying behind to keep the self-reliant nature of that sector space up, making sure they're okay. Rearguard action setup, seeking out any feral orcs and putting them to the sword and so forth. I think also their self-reliant nature leading to their good equipment would also shows what their equipment is really tended towards. What I mean by that is, that was a horrible sentence, is their tendency is towards close quarters fighting, not just melee, but flamers, melta weaponry, things up close and personal. And their equipment reflects that, and their capability of creating and upkeeping their equipment reflects that as well. So truly wondrous melta equipment and flamer equipment stuff, good quality, good strength. I think that leads to them being really good at Zone Mortalis style of warfare. Meltas and flamers clearing out corridors really nicely. The Melta can deal with basically anything that could be in that corridor, and the flamer can purge hordes of infantry effectively in a corridor as well. So it's not so much that they're going to be boarding action extraordinaires. I mean, they're no slouches, no Space Marines really are. But I think planet-side complexes, facilities, underground complexes and whatnot, corridors and the like, they'll be able to purge that and really get stuck in and really clean out Xenos threats or insurrectionist threats from areas, right? Because if you don't really get stuck in that way and do the dirty work of purging it corridor by corridor, feral orcs can quickly build up in size again, or insurrectionist plot can gain momentum again if you thought you got it all, but you didn't purge it all. So I think that's what we would see them also sticking around and doing, aside from also shoring up the planet and defending humans while they rebuild. I think we'd also see them getting stuck in, going forth, doing those frequent patrols, ensuring that they got as much purge as possible, so once the infrastructure is on its feet for that world, they can move on with confidence. Anyways, I basically am rambling here. That's what I think Vulkan is all about. I think that's why the Emperor created him. I think that's why the Emperor gave him such empathy, as well as perhaps even gave him the perpetual nature. You can't lose the figurehead of the people's champion, I guess. And that makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Anyways, that's it. A very down-to-earth Primarch. Again, a lot of people say Corax is for the way he does things, and he is. And I think Vulkan is also very much down-to-earth as well. So share your thoughts on Vulkan in the comment section below. A pretty cool Primarch for sure. And that's basically that. So with that said, we're moving on to the second of the traitorous Primarchs normally to talk about. We started off with Alpharius and Omegon. So now we're moving on to the 17th Legion. And that is Lorgar's Legion. And that's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. Anyway, that's it. Thanks very much for sticking through it. And until next time, take it easy.